Welcome to the Real Talk Cyber Podcast. My name is Jake Seller, your moderator for today. We got Des and Joe on the line. Des, how you doing today? Are you ready to talk some cyber?
Absolutely. A little under the weather, man, but I'm pushing through. So let's do it.
Joe, what about you, man? What's new in your world? Fresh haircut?
Feeling good. Saints beat the Panthers yesterday, so I'm feeling good. We're now, sorry, Des, we're now 2-8. Everything's moving in the right step. Ready to go.
Good stuff. All right, guys. Well, today we are going to be discussing. I am an SMB, and I am the IT leader of an SMB, and then my boss finally, after multiple years of trying to convince him, comes to me and says, IT leader, I need to put in place either cybersecurity resilience or this framework, or help me, please. And I need it now. What is the best way to approach it? You guys ready for that topic today?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
You spinning? Des, ready to go? Des, you're a little blurry for some reason. All right. So, Des, kick it off, man. I'm an IT leader. You're an IT leader. Someone comes to you and says, Des, we need to put in place NIST, CMMC, ISO. We need to be more secure. Our buddies just got hit by ransomware. What do I do? I got no resources.
First step is I need to take whatever framework has come to me and I need to do a gap analysis. I need to see exactly where we are from a posture perspective. Ideally, you would suspect that there's some low-hanging fruit as an IT team that we've already probably hit, right? Like we have endpoint protection, we do some form of patching, right, et cetera, like the baseline things. So I would then take the framework and I would say, this is what the framework says, this is where we are, assess where we are based on that. Next steps from there is I start to look at what maturation would look like. Firstly, I would look in our actual environment to say, what tools and resources do we have? And is it as simple as there's some functionality with our current tool suite that we just need to open up, right? People would be surprised how many times you're using a product for one thing. It has functionality to do something else, and simply it's just not turned on, right? A good example of this is I was in an environment once upon a time where we had like a IDS and IPS, and it never had any alerts that came through. And I said, yo, what's going on with this? It's like the last 7 months, I haven't seen anything. Well, when we looked to the configurations, it wasn't even configured to pick up anything, right? So then once we turned it on, it's then we started seeing stuff that had been happening, right? So it could be just as simple as that, right? That might be more of an extreme example, we didn't have it turned on, but there could be other things in your environment, like you have functionality, especially when you're doing things in the cloud. You have a lot more tools and resources that you could take, take action of and stuff like that. So that would be the first thing I would do going through that, in that situation specifically. So.
Joe, what do you think? Would you start with a gap assessment or would you do something else?
No, absolutely. I think the understanding where your gaps are, what are your shortcomings in the environment is obviously going to be paramount to understanding where you need to move forward, right? Like if we're talking about building a roadmap, that should be the first step outside of, the inventory of all of your systems. I think also what's kind of important in that, and one thing that'll come out of that gap assessment too, is kind of getting the technical aspect of your environment from where are our shortcomings point of view, right? I think vulnerability scans, both internal and external, are invaluable for that. Kind of seeing what's open to attackers. Like if we're thinking about it purely from a cybersecurity, not necessarily a compliance standpoint, but understanding how vulnerable you are in the threat landscape, right? Understanding what ports are open, what operating systems are outdated. That level of visibility is going to be eye-opening for a lot of, especially if we're talking about smaller organizations, that's going to be completely eye-opening, right? Because a lot of times we think, okay, well, we have the right tools in place. We're paying X amount a month for these specific tools, and everything's kind of just running smoothly, right? What you're going to find is that a lot of things are kind of vulnerable, right? You have a lot of areas of your environment that are open to attackers. I think that's definitely paramount to getting sort of the baseline for where do we move next.
I got a question for you guys, because I would say, especially when any IT leader, especially a head of IT, gets another initiative, I think the first thing that goes through their head is, do I have the bandwidth, and is this guy going to have the budget to support this initiative? Because a lot of times, especially in IT, they're just like in survival mode, right? They've given
Mm-hmm.
Joe, the IT guy, you know, a million responsibilities as it is. And one day he's fixing computers, another day he's putting in place SAP. He's all over the place. And so I think the biggest concern that comes up a lot with IT leaders is, okay, hey, great. This is, you want to put in place NIST 800-171, or you want to put in place ISO. Okay, that's great. How much time is this going to take me? And how do I prepare for this just bandwidth wise? How would you guys approach it from that perspective? Because I think bandwidth is always people's number one concern when they get these initiatives.
Absolutely. And that's justifiably so, right? Because the security in and of itself, especially the way when you haven't been doing it, it's 100% full time, right? Ideally, you would want to be at the stage where you've already engineered a bunch of the stuff into your workflows already. But let's just assume you're not there, right? And so we're just starting bare bones basics, going from there. That's why once you do your gap analysis and you see what you have in your environment, the next thing you have to do is project plan. And you have to see exactly what it's going to look like. By project planning, you also will start to wrap your mind around what some of the remediation items are going to look like too. Like, what is it going to take for us to actually do these things? And in some situations, it could be, like I say, as simple as, hey, we need some additional budget to do these things. In other circumstances, let's say that's not realistic, then all right, we're going to have to piecemeal together a variety of solutions to get to this end state that we need to get to. But most of the time where people go wrong, Jake, is they do a gap analysis. They see there's an issue. They're already overwhelmed. And guess what? They just throw fuel on the fire and they jump right in and start fixing stuff without having no fruition of what's coming, right? Because at this point, if you have not, going back to previous podcast episodes, if you have not set up the strategic vision and aligned those things correctly, then you're already just reacting. You're in a reactive state. Someone gave me this, now we're doing this, right? So since you're in that stage already, how is it that you press forward? You're going to have a good foresight of what the lift actually is before you start fixing it. Now that I know it's going to take X, Y, and Z amount of resources, I can start to plan. If I do get budget, guess what? That's a win, because I can get solutions based on what my budget is that might hit 3, 4, 5 of these items that I need to hit. If I don't get budget, then now I can start looking at, maybe there's some open source solutions, right? Maybe there's other resources that I could tap into. Maybe I need a managed service provider. Maybe that's what we need to do, right? There's a whole lot of other additional things that you can do from that point. But the first step is, this is where we need to be. This is where we actually are. What do we have in our environment? Taking that inventory that Joe was talking about, and then underlying the last step in that is to say, all right, cool, now let's project plan this out step by step to see what this is going to look like over the time frame that's been given to us. Do not just take it as a team of 1 or 10 people and say, let's just run and go start doing these things, because if you don't do it strategically, you'll set yourself up for failure long term and potentially short term as well.
I think that is such a huge challenge that people have, because people just go straight to the remediation assessment, and then they see their current state, and then they start solving problems without having a clear end state in mind. And so kind of what you're saying, Des, is like, hey, I solve all these problems with different products, solutions, whatever, but then next thing I know, I get to the end and I have to manage 50,000 products and processes.
Yep.
Versus standing at the end result being like, hey, I'm a one-man shop. I probably shouldn't be getting all of these. The solutions need to take that into account. So exactly. I honestly think, not to get on too much of a tangent, consultants, they don't take their remediation insight. They're not taking into account the end goal of each client, because each client's so different that, anyway. Joe, what are your thoughts on this? Do you agree? Is that kind of like the core challenge, or do you want to add something to that and maybe?
Yeah, no, to spin off of kind of what Des was saying. Really, the understanding too is that it's going to take time, right? And I think that's kind of what the biggest push is for a lot of these people kind of just jumping into the shark infested waters, right, if you will, is that they see they might have a compliance need, or that now that the CEO CFO has signed off on the budget, that they need to start implementing these things fast, right? And if there's now pressure, it's like, hey, well, why don't you got my buy-in, why don't we have the endpoint solution yet? Why don't we have the backup and disaster recovery solution yet? But it is going to take time, and you need to, when it comes from a resource perspective, you're going to have to think about what's best for your organization, both from a security strategic standpoint and a business strategic standpoint, right? One of the things that I run into a lot from a consultant's point of view, and I can use one client, for example. I was doing a SOC 2 assessment, and this organization had a one-person outsourced IT team, right? So this guy was on a contract. He, as much as they required his help, he had other clients, he had other things going on. In their mind, because they weren't ready for a SOC 2 assessment, right? And they didn't take into account that it was going to take a lot of time. They started just going out and buying solutions, right? Just purchasing and throwing all of their budgeting into solutioning. And when you look at their environment holistically, you understand that there are so many areas that just aren't managed, aren't monitored, aren't controlled, right? And that is completely counterintuitive and counterproductive to the idea of strengthening your security fabric. That's one of the things that, from a strategic security and a strategic business point of view, is a no-no, right? So yeah, it's going to take time. Be patient and be decisive, but also understand that those decisions have to fit your security and business strategy alignment.
So, Joe, say, I'm an IT leader who comes to you and I say, Joe, I'm a one-man shop. I got 30 minutes to talk to you right now because I don't have very much time. And, I need to build out a plan for, XYZ framework. But I need to do it where it's not going to require a lot of my time because I just don't have a lot. What are some maybe high-level strategies that you've seen implemented to maintain frameworks while at the same time not requiring as many resources?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say before we even continue on in that conversation, take a step back, right? Do we have basic security measures implemented? Like MFA, right? Are we pushing security patches? Are our operating systems updated? Do we have, anti-malware, antivirus installed on all the workstations? Do we have proper firewalling in place? Or do we understand our configuration from a firewalling perspective? Do we have backups? Are we doing, disaster recovery on those backups? Are we testing those backups? Right? Or do we have security awareness training? We could do a conversational gap assessment in that regard, right? It's really just going back to the basics for that one individual, right? Because to Des's point earlier, a lot of the things that stress people out are more than likely available to that person, right? And for a one-person IT team, once they get to the consultant, they're already sort of beyond their threshold of, kind of what's going on from a security fabric standpoint. And by the time they get to us, it's just a matter of, okay, all of the solutions that you currently have, everything that's currently on board, I can almost guarantee you or have default configurations, right? Have we looked into that? What do we need to enable to sort of get us to the next step, right? Inventorying, understanding what you currently have, take a step back, and really that's going to save you so much time in the future. Because if you find out that you already have, wherever your sensitive data lives, if you already have an option to turn on MFA, there you go. That's one step, right? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, maybe just take that one step further, because it's one thing to obviously become compliant, but I think another thing that's in a lot of these guys' minds is after compliance. How do I maintain compliance? What solutions are we putting in place so that I'm not going to have to spend 3 hours every single week on this when I barely have 3 hours as it is. Des, you kind of want to take that one step further to that maintenance element where people are like, yeah, I want to implement NIST, but I'm going to tell you right now, if we accomplish and put in place this framework, I don't have time to manage it and maintain it. Like what are some strategies that people can put in place to meet a lot of these controls without having to add a bunch of work to it?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way, well, let me start off by saying there is no easy way. At some point, you're going to have to pay either on the front end or on the back end. If you decide to pay on the front end, the way that you typically are going to have to do it is going to be through tooling and automation. That's just essentially what it is, right? We can build in compliance checks. We might use a GRC tool. I've used quite a few of them. There's some great ones out there that can help us monitor exactly where we are. We could attach in our environment, see exactly where we are, align it back to a framework. I would recommend that for every company, but especially if you're a small shop, that's an investment, especially if you have to meet if you have some compliance requirements that help get you to that next level. But then also just automating things out. If you're going to have to do like patching on on like endpoints and stuff like that, and you have vulnerabilities, where you can set up a lot of those things with your MDM where it automatically does some of that work for you, right? So I think really you have to find those things that is of the level of effort that you need on the day-to-day that you might need to get your eyes on. And the things that are like low hanging items, you want to build in automation to do those things. Now that's going to be very custom depending on your environment, right? Like if you're in an AWS environment, there's certain things that you can build out with Lambda functions, et cetera, et cetera. I assume that's not the direction and the level of depth we want to get into in this conversation, right? Where we're getting into the weeds there. But just depending on your environment, there is a bunch of different things that you can do. But I would say at a high level, I would encourage everyone, number one, to leverage artificial intelligence in 2025. It's a huge opportunity. I would say, secondly, then you need to also be looking at automation in your environment as it currently stands. And then also, as always, you need to build a process and procedure of something for yourself that holds you accountable, right? And that's another thing too, just some best practices when you are a smaller team. Put meeting slots on your calendar to do certain things, right? Okay, I want to look at alerts at 9:30 and I'm going to look at them again at 5:30 before I leave. That's a best practice that I guarantee you I've had to execute as a team of one before. Like, all right, cool. We have security awareness training. We have phishing campaigns. I have to put that on my calendar so that it's a thing, right? Because if not, what happens is you chase after fire, you focus on maintenance on the day-to-day. You never allocate any time out to do the security thing. It becomes a thing that hits the back burner. Whereas if you added that as, okay, this is 30 minutes on my calendar, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that's a free best practice that already puts you in a better situation than you would have been in if you just run into it ad hoc, right? That requires no automation. That requires no AI. That requires no innovation. That's just you as a person, best practice trying to find an opportunity. And I say find those opportunities too. Another thing is you should leverage other teams inside of your environment, right? So if you have a great partnership with HR, leverage them because there's some things that they will be able to take care of and they'll be able to do on their end that might make your life a lot easier, especially when we're talking about the onboarding, offboarding, different things like that. Help them and work with them to build a process that is sustainable for you if you're a team of one or if you have a smaller team, something that's going to make sense, right? And that by itself, building those partnerships across the board, across the company, makes it easier for you to execute on those things. Some things you might have to outsource, the hard technical things that has to be met. Look for automation, innovation, look for where AI can step in, build processes and workflows that make your life easier, and try to make it where it's just an automatic thing and your eyes only goes to the high value items that you have to hit. So
that's a great idea, Des. Like, I think, immediately whenever we go to certain initiatives, we look to ourselves and our own teams of like, hey, how do we put this in place with the resources that we have? But we don't look outside of our teams. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for alignment with other teams. I mean, you brought up HR, procurement, I'm sure, especially with managing contracts and all those different elements. I think a lot of people don't even look at all the different partners or teammates they actually have, even when they have just one IT individual. Joe, I
No,
mean,
you're
yeah, go
absolutely
ahead.
right, Jake. A lot of times every time I walk into an organization, the first message I push is that security isn't just my job. It's not just my team's job. It's the organization's responsibility. It's everyone's job.
Yeah.
And if you don't voice that message, then people look towards you to do every single step of it, right? You know what I mean? If you build partners inside of your organization from day one, then there's people that are going to have buy-in and they're going to work directly with you. You have to build that liaison and that connection and that partnership with other business areas, because that's really what creates a force multiplier that allows for you to have everything else and take care of everything else that needs to be done too. And it doesn't just fall to you. It's one of the biggest things that I think that we have to open our minds to is like, hey, this isn't just for me. This is for us as a whole. And we need to work together to do things like that. So,
Joe, did you want to add anything to that, or
Yeah, no, absolutely. From experience, especially with if we're talking SMBs, smaller shops, I think yeah, it's entirely ideal to get buy-in company wide and have cross collaboration between teams. Having worked with hundreds of SMBs, I could tell you that that is few and far between, right? Especially when we're talking about those small resource, small IT team shops. Um, in a lot of those cases, the leadership pushes for MSPs in that regard, right? Because they're really at the end of the day, they know that accounting, HR, they don't want them messing around with IT and security, right? They hired the IT person to do IT, and that IT person's going to do IT, and that's what they're responsible for, right? So they leverage MSPs. Which is fine, right? And I think for that's one side of the hey, I'm a one guy shop. And another thing too, the automation and the AI, 100% agree with that. But a lot of what our IT personnel inside those SMBs aren't necessarily hardened IT personnel. They don't, not to say that they're not savvy, but when it comes to understanding how to implement AI and automation, it's hard for them, right? That's where the MSPs come into play there, which again, not a bad idea. And I think that MSPs really could take that load off of you from a resource and especially from a time perspective. But to sort of you know get onto that though, there's one of the big things that I see missing in that regard, kind of playing into what Des was saying, is the communication between that IT person and the MSP, right? You might have a co-managed contract or a fully managed contract. But one of the things that I found is that a lot of those IT people thought that they were getting something, right? Or they thought that this was being monitored and that this was being managed, but they didn't necessarily fall under that service level, right? And then the communication gap between that person and the MSP leaves a lot of risk. So one thing that I would mention, if you are going to go the MSP route to sort of offload, ensure that you are in constant communication with that MSP, that you have a good relationship with that MSP, because when it comes time for not only just cybersecurity peace of mind, but also compliance as well, you're going to be leveraging them a lot, right? Because they're looking at different parts of your environment that you typically aren't because you don't have the time. So ensure that you're getting the proper documentation from them and maintaining a level of communication that's going to ensure that you have full visibility into what's being managed on their side.
Joe, do you think it's a common like evolution where say I'm a one man IT shop or maybe two man IT shop, and all of a sudden my leadership wants me to put in place some sort of cybersecurity framework and maintain that framework? Do you see it a lot where that IT leader basically says, okay, well, if this is going to happen, these are like the responsibilities that I'm not going to be able to manage anymore. And so I recommend like we use it, either hire more people or do it fractionally with like an MSP. Is that a common path that people take?
That's extremely common, yeah, and it's going to vary from compliance framework to compliance framework, right? Or if we're talking about certification models, or even if the framework that you're basing your security fabric on doesn't necessarily have a certification model and it's just more so a framework. I do see that a lot, and it is relatively common. Again, one of the things that I would put emphasis on is if you are going to go that route, to ensure that you have a proper visibility into what is being managed, right? That's key for that one IT individual. But sort of the flip side to that is like, okay, if you're, PCI DSS or HIPAA, right? You probably don't want that MSP to be a part of that data flow, right? The sensitive data flow. So some of the onus is going to fall on you to ensure that where that data is being stored is protected, right? So there's certainly levels to that conversation. But from a general IT infrastructure point of view, your network security, your endpoint security, understanding sort of the, from an access control perspective, like managing identities, all that, that could certainly be outsourced, no problem. But I would strongly urge all that IT individual to take inventory of where that sensitive data lives and understand how much of the onus falls on your organization to maintain the protective nature of that data.
I think one future topic is like, I know so many MSPs that do not, they say they're secure, but they're not. Like, I feel like that could be a whole nother topic inside of itself.
Oh, for sure.
To close out today, guys, we discussed, hey, someone comes to me, my leadership has this initiative to hit a certain framework. What do I do? We talked about assessments, starting off understanding where you're at and understanding where you want to go. We discussed how to approach those assessments. Don't jump straight to solutioning because you're not going to be setting yourself up for success. Solution with the end in mind. And then finally, we discussed what to do or some common strategies with limited resources like automation, third parties with MSPs, partnering with other people inside of your organization. Would you guys want to add anything to that? Is that a good summary?
Yeah, that's a great summary, Jake. That's a great summary. One thing I would add, though, is if you are a small IT team and you walk in and no one else is doing security, I'm going to challenge you. Assume that security is your responsibility and start working on it before the executive ever comes to you. This conversation and this work is so much easier. It's so much easier to complete and to do it the right way if you're the one driving the initiative and then you get buy-in over time, because you will have a baseline already set to already hit those other things that might need to be hit if it's a business need, so to speak. I would say if there's no one else doing security and you're in IT, assume it's your responsibility and start to work down that flow, because then at the very least, let's say you're there for 6-7 months, you might have already gotten the organization 50% better than where they would have been, and now you're not in so much of a rush. A lot of times these frameworks and other things like that, you can foresee them coming a mile away. Most organizations isn't saying, hey, here it is out of the blue. Keep your ears to the ground and keep your eyes open, see exactly what's coming and start working. Ask for help sooner and really game plan and take ownership of it. In this world, we need more leadership, right? And we need more people to see the vision of where we're going and to take initiative and to drive on that. And if you do that, then you become a game changer in your organization and not just a reactive person that's just going to take orders as they're given to you. We want to invoke change in the environment. And in our world, by us actually invoking that security change, we are making it where businesses are resilient, and that in the event that we have any type of disruptions, we're prepared for it to continue to carry out our missions and our values as an organization, and we're not beholden to any disruptions or outages that we'll have. That's good for our customers, that's good for our employees, and that's good for everyone else who is a direct beneficiary and an attachment to that too. So I want us to think about the bigger picture anytime we're talking about these things.
I think that's a good career growth advice. Like, you can't lead if you don't have a vision. And so if you're an IT guy waiting to be told what to do, it's very unlikely you're going to get more responsibility. Joe, you want to add anything to what we chat about, or did we summarize everything up pretty well?
That was perfect. Yeah, no, that was good. Yeah, I think I'm good.
Freaking have an IT vision.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Like, don't try and be this reactive IT guy who just gets told what to do. Like, the reason you're getting told what to do is because you're not going to leadership with telling them what to do. So,
right. Yeah.
So time to wake up IT leaders. Start having a vision and a strategy, and you want more money, you want more responsibility. Have a place where you want to take the business. So with that, we're going to close out today, guys. The Real Talk Cyber podcast. Feel free to like and subscribe. Follow Joe on Instagram. He's occasionally lifting. Des, he's got some good stuff on there too. He's got 1, 2, 3, 10 kids. Who knows nowadays? Each time
Oh
it's
my gosh, he said
10 times it's another kid.
I'm
Feel
on
free.
LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. No other social media platform.
You can follow him on LinkedIn. Joe, he'll get. You can poke him on Facebook. He'll poke back.
Unbelievable.
Thanks for following us today, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Peace.